What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Ripster, where movies and entertainment are our reputation. Escape from New York was released in 1981. It's directed by John Carpenter and stars Kurt Russell as Snake Plissken, a convicted bank robber who is sent to New York to rescue the U.S. president after his plane crash lands in Manhattan. First of all, before I get into this review, this is another one of those films that I've seen way back in the day, like 10 years ago. Didn't really much care for it, but now that I've been getting into a lot of these horror/action drama type films of the 80s, which I don't really consider this as a horror film per se, but it's more action type. I'm appreciating it. I still have my problems with it, but let's get into the positives of Escape from New York. First and foremost, as always, the story. The story was sound. It was pretty well told. You basically have this guy, Kurt Russell's character, who gets hired by the government to rescue the president after an unfortunate accident happens to his plane. And this guy, he just goes in and tries to rescue him while running into all this chaos. Basically, New York has become a shut-in from the rest of the world. A failed state, I guess you could say. This prison, pretty much. It's become a prison for convicts that just goes running around loose. It's basically cut off from the whole world. And since this movie came out in 1981, it was set in the future from when this movie came out in 1997. So they had to add some future elements to it. You have to have a good story. You have to have the anchor, which pretty much saves a movie, which is the story. Because without the story, it's pretty much nothing. You don't have a movie without a good story. And I thought the story for this film was pretty decent. But yeah, basically Kurt Russell, he just runs into all these problems and, he just goes in head first. He's like a retired soldier on top of being a bank robber. Something happened. I think he was like discharged or something, but he, basically gets hired to try to redeem himself and by saving the president in the middle of all this chaos. And I thought that was pretty decent. Speaking of, let's talk about Kurt Russell. This was the man. I mean, back in the day, this was around the time when he was shining. He was coming out with movies left from right. I think shortly after this, he did The Thing. And then after that, Escape from L.A. and The Big Trouble in Little China. All directed by John Carpenter, by the way, as I stated in my other last review. But this man was really shining. He became kind of like the action star of the 80s. Sort of like how Bruce Willis was like later on during his time. But he basically plays this guy named Snake Plissken. What a name. But I really truly think that that Hollywood, or John Carpenter himself, was trying to develop this action character that nobody else has, because you gotta remember, this was before John McClane. This was even before The Terminator. And, all those other action stars that sort of started popping up. This was 1981. All those others didn't start in like the mid to late 80s. So I think John Carpenter really had something. So Kurt Russell plays this guy. He doesn't have a care in the world. He's really laid back, but at the same time, he will snap your neck if he thinks that you're after him, or if he thinks that you're betraying him. He's not really that afraid to tell you like it is. There were several times throughout this film where he shows that he just doesn't give a crap about nothing. But yet, at the same time, later on, he does show some humanity. And in an action hero, that's what you want. That's a good thing. Like, you want a guy that doesn't give a crap, but at the same time, later on, you find out, okay, he does have some humanity after all. And I think this guy played it off really well. He just has a certain smoothness about him. And you can definitely hear it in his voice.
I'm making you an offer.
Bullshit.
Straight, just like I said.
I'll think about it.
No time. Give me an answer.
Get a new president.
We're still at war, Plissken. We need him alive.
I don't give a fuck about your war. Or your president.
He was sort of like a badass Terminator in a way. Very cool. And the whole eye patch thing, it doesn't really explain what that was from. Maybe it was from a fight, I don't know. But I think it made him look really pretty cool. A guy with an eye patch, it gave his character more of an oomph. More character. But Kurt Russell, he was definitely pretty cool. Like I said, he was definitely the man back in those days. And he also got Isaac Hayes as like the main baddie, I guess you could say. He was pretty cool. I hadn't really seen him in much, but I've heard of him in passing. He had something to do with Shaft. I think he was Shaft at one point. I wouldn't know. I don't watch any of that, but he was a pretty cool villain in this film. The look and feel of this film was really well done. I noticed something. John Carpenter, back in those days, kept it all in the family. Ever since he done Halloween, it's been the same crew. Same people, same filmmakers throughout like his entire career, like throughout to the mid to late 80s until he finally switched it up. But I noticed that he kept it all in the family. So like Dean Cundey, he would always do the cinematography work on his films. Alan Howarth, who would always do the music, the score for his films. They were just there. And like I say, it was like a family project on whatever he made, and I commend him for that. I mean, that means he was loyal, loyal to a fault. And all these people just, because he was such a good director, they always followed him. And at one point, I think I remember him saying that, I want my crew to do this film. He wanted the same people for this film. And that just shows me right there that, he was working with some talented people. But getting back to the look and feel, sorry, I veered off, guys. The lighting and the textures, even though this whole film, like 90% of it had taken place during night, Dean Cundey really shined. You could really tell his work from others. And it's just a very stylistic, the coloring and the textures and all that. He did a really good job, as usual, which really did fit with the story. And I think I got to slide into the set pieces as well because of that. Aside from the coloring and the textures and the cinematography work by Dean Cundey, the set pieces was done really well. Actually, most of the wide-angle shots, they had to actually build miniature buildings out of cardboards. So the wide-angle shots, where you would see it through the view of a plane or something, or a drone, those were actually like cardboard built and was like a miniature city that you could just tower over, that they built with their own two hands. And the way they made it look, and I forget what they did for the water, but it wasn't actually water, but it looked a lot like water. And the way it would pan over the city and the way the buildings would look, it would look really awesome. It would look really real. They had their work cut out for them, that's for sure. So remember, this was all pre-digital age. Nothing like that existed back then. So they had to do what they had to do, and it held up pretty well. It aged very well. And as I mentioned about the score, John Carpenter and Alan Howarth scored this. John Carpenter was mostly the composer. Alan Howarth, who had done like the Halloween, so for the Halloween films, he really did the score for this. But they worked together as a team. So both him and John Carpenter did a really good job on the score. Of course, it was synthesized. They had that certain style about them. As I said in my previous John Carpenter review, if you watch a John Carpenter movie and you hear the score, you've been Carpenterized. I know, that's not very clever. Still, just a very unique style, as Carpenter usually does. All right, let's move into the mixed. As much love and respect I have for the man, for John Carpenter, I did have a little bit of a problem of the direction of where he was going in this film, which leads me to the negatives. There was a little bit of a pace issue. The tone and pace wasn't what I expected. And now this may have been because of budgetary concerns and budgetary reasons, which I have no doubt. I did hear that they only had like a certain amount of money to film certain things. So like big explosions and car chases and stuff like that, they couldn't really do. But I don't know, that they could have benefited from a little more action. I just felt like this movie was a little bit stale. I felt like I was veering off a little bit and kind of drifting off a little bit. It's like, and then something happens, and then like I'll get back into it again. But I just felt like it could have benefited for more action in the film as a whole. But again, I'm not blaming the filmmakers for that. It's budgetary concerns, and that has a lot to do with how you make your movie. Budgets and money is really the king of it all. I mean, aside from producers. And I gotta talk about Donald Pleasence. He was in this film. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because Halloween has pretty much ruined other films that he has been in for me. But I just didn't feel like he was that much of a useful character in this. He plays the President of the United States, the guy that Kurt Russell's trying to save, the guy that this story centers around. Yes, I get it. But I just didn't like the way they wrote him. It was just, to me, it was kind of a waste. Other than a little bit of a moment he had at the end. Right at the end. I just felt like his character was a little bit of a waste. Now again, I understand that that's probably what the filmmakers was going for this character. Completely different character from what he plays in the Halloween film series. I get it. But that still doesn't change the fact I just didn't really get into the character. I'm sorry, enough said. This still held up well. It's not a bad film by far, but if you're a Kurt Russell and John Carpenter fan, you'll still get a kick out of this film. It's an acquired taste. So, Escape from New York, have you seen it? You must have. What did you think of it? Did you find it to be one of the best, or have you seen better? Leave me your comment down below and give me your thoughts. Stay tuned for more videos and reviews coming soon. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video. Like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace, the Reptors.